Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're looking at a huge scientific puzzle that really it took decades to solve. How to create efficient blue light.
It sounds so simple now because it's everywhere.
Exactly. We're tracing the history of the high brightness blue light emitting diode, the LED. We figured out red LEDs way back in 1962, and green ones came along pretty soon after.
What's blue? Blue was the long-term dream. It was the necessary final piece of the puzzle. Without it, you don't get energy-saving white light. You don't get full-color displays on your phone.
Right. So that's our mission for this deep dive, to really get into the sheer stubbornness of the science here and the two critical breakthroughs that finally shattered a scientific stalemate.
And it really was a stalemate. To even start to generate blue light, which is very high energy light with a short wavelength, you needed a very, very specific type of material.
Okay, so it all boils down to the material. And you needed two things, right?
Two things. First, you needed a wide-bandgap semiconductor.
A wide bandgap. And let's just quickly break that down. The bandgap is kind of like the energy wall that electrons have to jump over to emit light, isn't it?
That's a perfect way to put it. For a common material, like silicon, that wall is tiny. It's about 1.1 electron volts. Easy to jump.
But for blue light, which is high energy, you need a much higher wall.
A much higher wall. You need something like gallium nitride or GaN. Its wall, its bandgap, is nearly 3 times higher, around 3.4 electron volts. That forces the electrons to make this huge jump, and in doing so, they release a high-energy blue photon.
So that's requirement number one, a big energy wall. What's the second?
The second thing is that the material had to have what's called a direct bandgap structure.
Okay.
And that structure is basically what guarantees high efficiency. It ensures that when the electron makes that jump, its energy is converted directly into light, not just, wasted as heat.
So GaN gallium nitride, it checked both boxes on paper. It had the wide bandgap and the direct bandgap. It was the theoretical perfect choice.
Theoretically, yes, but in practice,
It was a nightmare.
a total nightmare. So much so that by the mid-1970s, research into GaN was actually dying off. Scientists just couldn't solve two massive fundamental problems.
Which were?
They couldn't grow high-quality crystals of it. And second, they couldn't successfully create what's called P-type material. It felt impossible.
A true scientific brick wall. Okay, so let's unpack that first problem.
Yeah.
Crystal growth.
Right. At the time, there was this, you could almost call it a gospel in the field of crystal growth.
And the gospel said?
It demanded that your crystal and its base, the substrate you grow it on, they have to match perfectly at the atomic level. Their atomic lattices have to line up.
But with GaN, that wasn't possible. Researchers were pretty much forced to use cheap sapphire substrates.
And the sapphire had a massive 16% lattice mismatch with the GaN.
Wow. 16%.
It's astronomical. Trying to grow GaN on sapphire was like, I don't know, trying to stack tiny, perfectly square Lego bricks onto huge, round Duplo blocks.
It just doesn't work. You'd get chaos.
Total chaos. The mismatch created this rough, ugly surface just full of defects, which completely destroyed the material's electrical performance. It was useless.
Okay, so for years, that was the dead end. But then, in 1985, some researchers basically decided to defy the gospel.
They did, and this is the first huge breakthrough. They introduced something called a low temperature, or LT, buffer layer.
How did that work?
It was so clever. Instead of growing the GaN directly onto the sapphire, they first put down a super thin layer, maybe 20 to 50 nanometers, at a low temperature around 500 degrees Celsius.
It was kind of soft and flexible.
Exactly. It acted like a flexible intermediate layer, a shock absorber. Then they cranked the heat up to about 1,000 degrees and grew the main GaN crystal on top of that buffer layer.
And that buffer layer allowed the top GaN layer to kind of relax and self-correct.
That's it. It produced the world's first extremely high-quality, transparent, specular GaN film. One of the scientists who saw it said the feeling was simply unforgettable. This one trick made the material 100 times better at conducting electricity.
100 times. Just incredible.
A massive shift. It completely changed the game.
So, okay, that solved the crystal quality problem. One huge hurdle down. But the second 1p-type conduction, that was still blocking them, right?
Still a brick wall. And this one was even more frustrating because theory suggested it was actually impossible.
Impossible? Why?
Because of something called the self-compensation effect in wide bandgap materials. Researchers needed their material to have more holes or positive charge carriers than electrons. But the theory said the moment you try to add impurities or dope the material to create those holes,
The material fights back.
the crystal lattice, Literally fights back. It immediately creates counter defects to sabotage your effort and neutralize the doping. It just would not cooperate.
So how did they finally get around that? This feels like where the final piece of magic comes in.
It really was. They doped the material with magnesium, which they thought should work, but nothing happened. It didn't create the p-type material they needed. The self-compensation was still winning.
So it was another dead end.
It seemed like it. But then came the second breakthrough. In 1989, they took that same magnesium-doped GaN and they just blasted it
Blasted it with what?
with low-energy electron beam irradiation, LEB for short. They just hit it with this electron beam.
And that worked.
It worked. The electron beam was just enough energy to break the unwanted chemical bonds that were neutralizing the magnesium. It freed up the magnesium atoms to finally do their job and create the world's first low-resistivity p-type GaN.
Wow. So they just had to knock those atoms into place.
Pretty much. And that was it. That was the final key. Once they combined the high-quality N-type material from the buffer layer discovery with this newly activated p-type material,
They had everything they needed.
they immediately fabricated the world's first functioning GaN-Re-N junction blue LED right there in 1989.
And the impact must have been immediate.
Oh, it was exponential. You can see it in the data. Publications on GaN research, which have been trickling along, just exploded. And the external quantum efficiency, basically how good the LED is at turning electricity into light, it had been stalled for years at around 0.1%.
And after this,
It skyrocketed. In just over a decade, it went from 0.1% to over 36%. An unbelievable leap.
because this technology finally completed the spectrum, red, green, and now blue. And that's what made the modern, efficient, energy-saving white LED possible.
Exactly. By just taking that blue LED and adding a simple yellow phosphor coating, you get the clean, bright white light that is now absolutely central to global energy reduction efforts.
So when you look at all of this, what does it mean for you, our listener? The entire modern lighting revolution, which is projected to be a major, major tool in the fight against global warming, it all hinged on just two engineering feats.
Two clever counterintuitive tricks, the low-temperature buffer layer and the electron beam activation technique. That's all it took to break the logjam.
Which really makes you think, doesn't it? It leaves us with a final provocative thought.
It does. Think about the biggest engineering problems we're facing today. How many of them are simply waiting for one person or one team to defy the current scientific gospel, to find a clever, flexible workaround for something that seems impossible, like a 16% atomic mismatch?
And are we maybe giving up too soon on certain materials or ideas just because they defy the way we think things should work?